So what happens is in our mind, we begin to build up this protection system that we feel like I'm protecting myself, but in all reality, I'm enslaving myself to those thoughts. And we say, I'm getting free because I don't want the pain again, but what's happening is inside our mind, we are still dealing with that pain, and we're saying, I'm not letting anybody else hurt me. So we go to the new job interview for a better job, and people are interviewing us, and they see the talent and abilities that we have, but they don't want to have to deal with the wall of having to pull that down to get to your value.
Right.
Say that one more time. We have built up walls so much that when we go into an interview or we go into a relationship or we're now encountering a new life with people, we have put such walls up that they see the value. That's what attracted them to you, is the value, your talent, your ability. But they don't want to have to worry and deal with the wall of them having to pull that wall down to get to your value. So we get married and we have walls up because we've been hurt in other relationships, but you can't hug a wall. So you can have sex, you can do all your stuff that you do in marriage, but you can never get intimate with someone because of the walls that are there.
Right.
We got all the stuff that we're carrying, and we put these walls up. Everybody's going to treat me the same way. If nobody protects me, I'm protecting myself. But what's happening is the devil is playing tricks on you to keep that Jericho mindset. Nobody can get in, and you can't get out. And if you can't get out, you can't get to the mountain.
Right.
And if you can't get to the mountain, you can't taste the honey, and you're sure not going to get any grapes.
Right.
So we're talking about going into our promised land, but the first place that we have to deal with in getting to the promises that God has for us is dealing with our mind.
Right.
If I don't get my mind straight and the walls torn down or the strongholds broken in my life, I'll never get to the promises that God has for me. That makes sense what I'm saying here?
Yes.
So how do I do this? How do I enter in? I have to let this mind, Christ's mind, be in me so that I can think how he thinks and not take on offenses. People, this is interesting. Find a woman that's been abused in a marriage and watch after they divorce what kind of person they attract. Unless they get their mind straight, unless they change their perspective about themselves and bring the presentation of who they really are to the surface and tear the walls down, they'll attract the same type that was in their life before. Why? It's not the people, it's what they're portraying.
Right.
So the walls of Jericho had to come down. And the walls in our mind have to come down, and we have to get a different perspective about who we are.
Right. Amen.
So when the word says that Joshua, look at this, all this has been given to you in your hand, the king and the mighty men of valor. What he's saying here is that you have all that you need to tear those walls down when I'm with you. So he got an instruction. For 6 days, I want you to walk around the walls one time. For 6 days. And on the seventh day, isn't it amazing? If you've ever been on a fast or any extended fast, you'll find that the first day seems to be the hardest. Just getting your flesh under control. But the second and third day, when you get to that third day, it's like you've now become one with this thing. Your whole body, soul, and spirit in that 3-day process has now been blended together, and you're now focused on where you're going. But it's something about the seventh day in a fast that totally transforms and renews the way you think. Why? Because you have now purged yourself of false illusions.
Right.
Fear, anxiety, all these things. And we're now resting in the Lord. We're now moving into that place that all that's gone. And I think there was something to it. I want you to walk around this thing for 7 days. And I really want you to get the concept here. I'm going to be with you. And if you will obey what I say in the instructions and then give me everything that's in the city, all of this belongs to me. There's things I want you to kill, but the rest of it that remains belongs to me. And when you give that to me, I'm going to give you the rest of the promises. If you give your mind to the Lord, if you think on those things that he has provided, the things that he's put into your life, and you don't allow fear and anxiety to rise up, and you think like Christ thinks.
Right. Amen.
Father, if it be thy will, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, that moment he stepped into his flesh and said, and then he stepped right back into obedience as a nevertheless. Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will. Not my will, not my thinking, but your will be done. If we can ever get to a place that we become like Christ in our thinking and we give our mind to him, take control of the walls, be obedient, walk around that thing and shout.
Yeah.
You've got to speak to the wall sometime for the wall to come down. No army until this time has ever conquered or entered into Jericho because of the walls. There are things that wants to enter into your life that you're preventing from entering into your life that comes from God, your peace, your joy. All of that's wanting to enter into your life, but because the walls are up, it can't get in. It's up to you to walk around those walls. This week we're going to walk around some walls.
Right.
And if that mindset needs to be changed, we're going to walk around this thing. And we're going to walk around this thing until we get to a place that we have the boldness and the courage and the obedience to shout, make a sound against the word that's coming against your mind. I'm not talking about positive thinking here. I'm talking about a spiritual concept that God has given to us that I'm able to step into the realms of the Spirit out of obedience to God. And when I begin to shout, my praise, my worship now causes the walls to come down. Amen. When the walls come down, now I can invade the city that I have built up around my life that my thoughts are contained in, and I can go in and take out what needs to come out of my mind and then offer to the Lord all that remains. This is yours, Lord. I give you my mind. Give me your thoughts. I'm not talking about the crowd here. I'm talking about the thoughts of God. That makes sense here? So when I submit my mind to the Lord, I think Jericho can have a representation of our mind. And the first place that they had to deal with in order to get to the houses that they did not build, to the land that they did not plow up with the crops on it that was ripe and ready for picking, they had to deal with their mind. They could not go any further in the promises until they dealt with their mind. Many people could not even go into Jericho because of their mindset. They had to die off on the outside. But what God was doing says, okay, now that you've made a decision to follow me, now that you've made a decision to go into the land of more than enough, then we're going to go back to dealing with the mind. We got you out of Egypt, we got to get Egypt out of you.
Right.
And once that we conquer the mind and we submit our mind to Christ, now he gives a strategy for every hill, every mountain, to the seashore, to the going down of the sun, to the rising again. All of that is our territory if first we give him our mind.
Amen.
Come on now. So what is it that has you bound? It's not somebody. It's not a person, because Ephesians 6:12 says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and spiritual wickedness that's in high places. So it's not a person I'm dealing with. It's not the abuse that I have undergone. It's not the divorce that I went through. It's not the person that I encountered this with. It is a demonic spirit that is carrying bricks and mortar that's wanting you to build up in your mind a fortress to protect you from future pain. But you will never experience pain again when you are in your promises in Jerusalem.
Amen.
But I've got to get through Jericho and give that to God. Now, in our reasoning, we always want to take control of this thing. Well, you don't know what they did to me. You don't understand what I've had to go through. What? You know what? Everybody's got a story.
Right.
And there's not a person in this room that doesn't have a story. And it doesn't matter what lifestyle you come from. It doesn't matter how you comb your hair. It doesn't matter what kind of shoes you have on. Everybody in here has a story. So you think you're the only one that has a story? No, everybody's got bricks and mortar.
Right.
Everybody has something that they're dealing with in their mind.
Right.
But very few people learn how to submit their mind to the Lord. And when he says, everything that is in Jericho, you give to me. And everything following that, I'm going to give to you. This is just simple. It's really easy, but it's very difficult. Because we're so used to taking control of our mind, and I'm not saying that we need to be airheads, but we need to submit our mind to him and give it to him. It doesn't throw out our reasoning. It doesn't throw out our understanding. It doesn't throw out any of that. But what we're doing is we're letting the mind of Christ be in us. And I'm not just talking about strongholds of sinful natures, because they were now in the promised land. He's dealing also with self-righteousness here too. Self-righteousness says it's my opinion and nobody else's opinion. And I'm going to invoke my thoughts upon you instead of having compassion upon you. I've never hurt like you've hurt, never been through what you've been through, so I don't understand what you're going through, and I don't understand what it feels like to be your way, but I'm going to invoke how you need to be. And what we find is there is self-righteousness that comes forth that wants to put our religion down somebody's throat instead of having compassion upon some and bringing them into the presence of Almighty God. Does that make sense here, what I'm saying? We can do more damage with self-righteousness than with sinful nature. Why? Because what's happened is we have put this barrage of bricks and mortar in our mind. And we're trying to reason in our own life, trying to work our own life out in the guidelines of what we're doing. And we're finding ourselves failing over and over and over. But we try to take the concept and bring it upon other people to prove to them that's what they need to do, because that's what we know. In all reality, we win people by the love we have for one another, not by the religion we have. That makes sense here? So from different perspectives or different spectrums, God deals with us and says, hey, if you just give me your mind, I'll cause your heart to begin to change towards people, and you'll win more people with your love than with the rage. That makes sense what I'm saying here. So this is not just for everyone else. This is for me. And whatever seat you're sitting in, this is for you. But we have a tendency in church under a religious guise or mindset, oh, I know somebody this applies to. No, what we need to do is take this and evaluate me. And if I evaluate me, I won't be offensive. The word says you know them by the love you have for one another. It's not love to take somebody by the neck and start pounding your religion in them. As soon as they get loose and their ears are not hurting anymore and they get their hair straightened out, they're going to say, you know what? I ain't going to hang around them anymore because I'm hurting bad enough. I don't need some religious knucklehead to come in and pound me when I'm looking for something to set me free.
Right.
You know, it used to offend me when I first started preaching when people would fall asleep in my service. But today, it doesn't bother me one bit. Why? Because we don't know what that person has gone through all week long, and this is the only place of peace that they ever had, and they feel comfortable and they can get rest. Well, they're not listening. How you know they're not listening? They can probably quote more of what's being said in their sleep than you paying attention because you're so disturbed by everybody else's stuff that you can't pay attention to what's being said. Therefore, you keep doing the same thing over and over when we've been preaching enough messages that you ought to be free.
Amen.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? All right. It's good we can laugh in church, huh, Jake? Here's the deal that I perceive here in this thing about Jericho, and I see so much in this. We could preach a month just on these first 3 verses. He says, God says, and that it remains after you have slaughtered everything I command you to slaughter, all the rest belongs to me. And I think in our mind, we put these walls up for our own protection. And God's saying, if you can ever get to the place that you understand, I have given this to you, and I have turned the king over to you in your hands, and the men of valor. So everything that comes against you, that you put up these walls in your mind, I've given to you to conquer. And I want you to kill them. I want you to kill it. I want you to uproot it. I want you to destroy it. And then everything that is left in your mind, I want you to give it to me. And I'm going to bring you into every other place that I've promised to you, from the seashore to the mountains, is yours, if you'll learn how to submit your mind to me. What's the limitations in our life? It's in our mind. It's not your education, because I know many people that don't have a extended education in their life, and they're doing mighty well. And I have seen people that have a tremendous education that are fumbling the ball and don't know what to do. So it has nothing to do with your education. It has everything to do with your perception in your mind. So if you can ever get the walls down and learn how to walk around it and shout, the walls will come down. And submit your mind to him. He's going to give you your Jerusalem.